Today on Locked On Rockies, they make it official. The interim tag is removed, and Warren Schaeffer will be heading up the Rockies once again. Is it the right move? The wrong move? Let's dive into it all.
You are Locked On Rockies, your daily Colorado Rockies podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Rock on Rockies fans, welcome into the Locked On Rockies podcast for today, the 25th day of November in the year 2025. I'm your host of the Locked On Rockies podcast, Paul Holden, bringing you your daily Colorado Rockies talk right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where you can find your team every day. And with your support, thanks to your support, we are the number one sports podcast network. Thank you so much for all your support, and thank you for continuing to tune in to Locked On Rockies all off-season long and regular season, off-season, regular postseason one day. Fortunately, I haven't necessarily led to much luck for the Rockies in my 5 seasons now talking about the team, but hey, maybe it's all going to change. But one thing that didn't change for the Rockies, they will be going into 2026 with the same manager. Warren Schaeffer sticking around. Lots of buzz. You know, it was interesting kind of to seeing some of the reactions here about this move here. Quick thought is before we dive into everything. Saw this coming, not too surprised, and I'll explain why coming up here in just a little bit. Before we go any further, I want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the app today. And of course, if it's your first time checking out the show, I am Paul Holden. I am your Rockies fan extraordinaire, but bringing you your daily Colorado Rockies talk here for over 5 seasons now. I've been following this team as an avid Rockies fan my entire life. As we now dive into the big news here, and news, again, not surprising or shocking to me whatsoever. I thought this was coming from a mile away. I thought you could have just wiped out the interim tag in general there. When you made the move, I figured just this is going to follow kind of the usual Rockies path of interim guy that has done, I guess, depending on who you ask, enough to keep the job, but is an option. And I think this is really it. Does Warren Schaeffer, the manager, make the Rockies a contender immediately and change all their bad habits? And is he going to be a manager that unlocks the next level of Rockies baseball? Probably not. But at the same time, there's something to be said about the stability that he did bring to the team, and the fact that you really didn't hear a lot of negative stuff from players about Schaeffer. And obviously they have to be careful with how they do that, consider, walking the fine line of being a professional and whatnot. But it's still pretty impressive to hold together that locker room and hold together the vibes from being as miserable as they could have been, and kind of keep this team in a spot where it could have been way more toxic and angry and frustrating, on top of how frustrating and everything it was. Plus, you have a good relationship. It was spoke highly about by the players. He's had interactions with a lot of the players. Oops, there goes my little shirt there. But anyway, the point is, I don't think that they needed to do something drastically different at manager, because at the end of the day, is that the spot that's going to drastically impact and influence who and what the Rockies are next year? Now, the obvious answer and the easy answer you would be yes. Like, of course, it's the manager. He's going to be calling, he's going to be implementing his ideas, his philosophies, his strategies and things. But, there's a lot of conversation about how much the manager even how much power they even have, how much control they have over the lineup and such. And I think Schaeffer's probably got some good control and influence there. But at this point, it's way more about what Schaeffer has been given on a roster and what the Rockies will do in free agency and throughout the offseason for him. And this is why, for me, one of the things that was really infuriating about last year was, as you're going through this, as they were navigating this, a similar time this year, back-to-back 100-loss seasons, you've been dealing with some tough stuff here. Bud Black was not brought back immediately, but then you just settled back and went with Bud Black. Bud Black's tenure there was enough that we had seen and enough evidence that Bud Black was not going to be a turning piece for this Rockies. Whether it's the roster, he's not able to use the roster that he's given to turn it into a winner. So there was no real point in bringing Bud Black in and then having him start and go through this whole offseason and everything this year when you should have known that he was not going to be able to be it wasn't working with Bud Black. It wasn't working with Bud Black after 2024, and it was abundantly clear that going back to Bud Black in 2025 was a mistake. And even though the Rockies lost a lot of their, at least Schaeffer does bring a different philosophy and approach. And now with the removal of the interim tag with it, I believe I'll check some details here. We'll head to MLB.com. We'll get some details here in just a second. But at least now he can go in and implement his vision, his way, and do things completely how he wants to. When you are operating under that interim thing, it was basically, hey, you just field the team, make the calls, back them up, and run the show there. And with them not immediately, making that hire and promoting him during the season, he was, he probably was sitting there. It's like, I don't know, who it's up in the air. Now Schaeffer gets to go in and implement his vision, his ideas, his philosophies all throughout the offseason into spring training and into the year. And above all, he can just if he keeps a good locker room, and if he does help us, if he does turn things around next year, if the Rockies do come out and they are a better team and improve in some metrics, and the Rockies start building a little momentum, that's exactly the kind of thing you're working for here, as the timeline for the Rockies certainly suggests they're not going to be in any sort of competitive, in contention anytime soon. So if Schaeffer can just come in and keep things organized and bring in a little bit of that younger, different mindset, bring in a little bit more of the analytics, bring in a little bit more of that, especially hopefully working with DePodesta, and he can come in and now say, hey, in the games last year, this is where we were lacking. This is the information we need during games, or the information that we want to have during games, or XYZ. This is what I was missing while managing the Rockies and working under the Rockies last year. Can you help me get better here? Ideally, those two are going to work together to help bring this team up to speed in the analytical world. Hopefully, those two are going to be able to work together to maximize their resources to help getting these Rockies players into and developing them into quality baseballers. Major League baseballers. Because again, we've seen flash in the pan moments, we've seen things, but the development issue of the Rockies is clear. And if the big part here is that Warren Schaeffer's job should be about player development. That's why he was, not only the stability, not only it being a familiar face, but this should be a guy that can show you that he is developing these players, helping guys get to the next step. That should be the story. That should be the things we're watching here throughout spring training and into the season next year. Because all in all, out of all of the moves the Rockies needed to make this offseason, I'm okay with this move being an in-house hire here. I think Schaeffer provides you a fine stopgap manager for a couple of years with guys that you need to take steps up, need to improve and need to, develop. Well, they have a relationship with their manager here, and they can work with them and work on the things that they want to achieve together to get to that level. Certainly, there might have been some buzzworthy names or anything and such, but at the end of the day, manager isn't going to be the overall thing that really changes things for the Rockies. It was different with Bud Black, though, because it was a long tenure here, and it was like, okay, what exactly are we doing by sticking with Bud Black? What exactly are we doing by continuing to, kid ourselves that he's this pitcher whisperer at Coors Field still, and he's unlocking the potential of these players, when in reality that you could have pointed to a few seasons where it just was like, what exactly are we doing here? I'm hoping now that this opportunity gives Schaeffer to be the bridge to really start help bringing the Rockies into the modern game. But I was surprised to see that there was a lot of criticism about the moves, and there was some interesting thoughts here as the range of intrigue and the range of response to this move was pretty varied on social media. Let's talk about that coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Rockies. Before we do that, though, got to tell you about the folks that help make this show possible, and that includes FanDuel. Folks, I mean, how much sports do we got going on right now? The NBA, we got that in full swing now. Not only we got the NBA Cup action going on, we got the regular season, the Nuggets in for another exciting season, but we got the Broncos and all the football action going on. We got hockey. We got the red hot Avalanche, and you can get in on the action right now. FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Yes, that's right. Your first $5 bet wins on, it could be something super simple. It could be Jokic scoring, over on the Jokic points. It could be over on the Makar assists. Something simple, something easy. And when that first $5 bet wins, you're going to get $300 in bonus bets. Even if you miss the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. So right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com. That's FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Back at it here, segment number 2 of today's episode of Locked On Rockies. Thanking you for making us your first listen of the day and shouting out all of our everydayers for your support, making us the #1 sports podcast platform. Thank you so much for all your support and for tuning in and enjoying the show, hanging out with us here throughout the off season and more. Really appreciate that. And let me know what is on your mind. Warren Schaeffer returning as manager here for the Colorado Rockies. And the response was fascinating. And when you really look at it, there was, some people condemning it, saw some Denver radio sport folks condemning the move and saying that it's wrong. Had some people kind of with mixed reactions. I think most people that I was kind of looking at from that have been following and covering the Rockies, not too surprised and kind of just reacting to the fact that it was, a move that is fine for where the Rockies are at. I don't think anyone, I didn't sit here saying it was the best move that they've seen the Rockies make. But I think for the people that see this move, and Christian Saez over there at DNVR Rockies had an interesting thread about this on Twitter as well. But I can understand why you would look at that as a Rockies fan and be going, same old, same old. He was part of that team last year. I don't want anything to do with that. I don't want to deal with that. I don't want to see anything associated with that. No piece should have returned. But, and some other folks also are sitting there and saying no one wants the job. Folks, remember, as much as, we were talking about the stuff with Paul DePodesta and stuff, people want jobs in Major League Baseball. Anybody that has any sort of inkling or want to be a manager in Major League Baseball, if they could get the Rockies job, if they had an opportunity to get the Rockies job, they would be all over it. They would want the job. That as much as you could sit there and say it's the Rockies, it's this, it's that, it's that. It's a very highly coveted job, no matter what they are. I remember. Early on in my before I left for college, I got to sit in the booth during the KOA broadcast. I got to listen to the radio team do their jobs, do their work there. And I can't remember if it was Jack or Jerry, which one said this to me. But I was like, does it ever get tough to do your job? And they were like, there's 30 teams, 2 guys in the booth, so 60 of these jobs in the country. I wouldn't trade it for the world. And like that really stuck with me. I mean, that's what you got to remind yourself here. No matter what the situation of the team is, it's still a rare, once in a lifetime opportunity for some of these guys, especially when you're talking about managerial spots here. And now Schaeffer has the opportunity to really, Schaeffer has the opportunity to help open the door for what can be the next era of Mario baseball. That's a Freudian slip right there, of Colorado Rockies baseball. It's going to be I mean, we are off season. It's November. We are playing the what if game here. But if next year, again, the Rockies look like a better team across the board, the run differential is better, the pitching staff drops the ERA and the runs allowed, and the offense sees some improvements here. We see Brenton Doyle and Ezekiel Tovar return to form. We see Hunter Goodman, make it the norm. We see Jordan Beck, break out. We see Mickey Moniak take strides on, becoming a little bit more impactful on defense, or becoming really impactful as a base stealer or something like that. If we are able to see that he's opening the door for improving what is by on paper a not good Rockies roster that he inherited, by the way, at the midst of the worst start in Major League Baseball history, I think that should build some confidence. But I think anything that has any sort of association with 2025 is going to warrant some hesitation. I don't think that I don't think that Warren Schaeffer is going to completely change everything for the Colorado Rockies. I think that's far from the case. Well, I shouldn't say far from the case. That's really not fair. It's a young, again, now that he is the full official manager, he should have more of a say, especially when you're talking about the fact that he was dealing with the front office that was in transition, clearly, with who is going to be calling the shots. What does the GM, look like? What does the president of baseball operations situation look like? He's in a completely different situation than where he was as the interim manager of the team. This is going to be his opportunity to show what he can do as the manager. So I think it's the cynicism and the earned doubt of the Colorado Rockies and this looking like, oh wow, internal hire, blah blah blah. All that I can see. But if you're just looking at that, you're not following it enough. You're not looking deep enough, I should say. Because you really need to look at the realistic timeline for the Rockies here and consider the fact that this deal is probably just going to help piece together a transition, the continued transitionary period of the Colorado Rockies and through this rebuild. Now, through this rebuild, he could, really impress. He could, help guys unlock some new level of whatever, and that'll change the game. But I think the goal and the plan of this is to just fill the next couple of seasons as the Rockies completely, have to completely reevaluate their roster throughout the entire organization. and start seeing what they have and start maximizing what they have there. And if Schaeffer's able to do that, then that's a great sign. Let's get some details here from the Manny Randall here on MLB.com. The club announced Monday that Warren Schaeffer, who took over as interim manager last season when Colorado parted ways with Bud Black in May, has been named the team's manager in 2026. As he sheds the interim tag and becomes the 8th full-time manager in franchise history, Schaeffer said a major goal for him is to continue guiding a young roster towards success through collective strength. I'm incredibly grateful for the opportunity to continue leading this team, he said. My focus remains on continuing to build a strong, unified culture based on accountability, hard work, and trust. We have a group of guys who care deeply about competing the right way, and my goal is to keep strengthening those relationships while leading a team that our fans can embrace and be proud of. Schaeffer, 40, served as the Rockies' third base coach and infield coach prior to being named the interim manager. He's been with the organization in a coaching/player development capacity for more than a decade after his professional playing career ended. He was selected by the Rockies in the 38th round. Wow, 38th. Remember that? All those crazy drafts. And here's what D. Podesta said. We're confident Warren is the right person to lead our club moving forward, said Rockies president of baseball operations Paul D. Podesta, who was hired earlier this month. He has established strong relationships with our players, understands the culture of this franchise, and embodies the energy and work ethic that we want on and off the field. Schaeffer took the helm for the Rockies on May 11th after the club began the season 7-33. Oh, my God, man. Like, It's amazing when you just read some of the stats from last year after, now the season's been gone for a month and some change now. And then you just realize the Rockies didn't the Rockies lose 50 games before winning 10? Wasn't it that close? Crazy. Oh my God. Back here to the piece. With one of the youngest rosters in the majors and a franchise record 13 players making their debut in 2025, it was another season of growth pains for Colorado that ended with a franchise record 119 losses. It was a rocky start for Schaeffer after he took over as interim manager, with Colorado losing 17 of the next 19 games. But in a stretch that I indicated, Schaeffer was able to connect with his young players and help them cultivate their skills at the major league level. The club won 8 of its next 15, nearly doubling its season win total in the process. The Rockies played nearly 500 baseball in the first 6 weeks after the All-Star break, winning 17 of 35 games and further bolstering the case that Schaeffer had found a way to somewhat steady the ship before Colorado ended the season by losing 23 of the final 29 games. I think that's really what my main takeaway here. What are the key driving points, the key features of why Warren Schaeffer got the job is his relationship with the players. It's clear that he had a relationship with the players that was positive enough to not only keep the locker room in a good spot, but also work its way up throughout the organization and be recognized there. I can't remember exactly, but I think I saw Patrick Saunders had a quote from Kyle Freeland saying that he loved playing for him and that stuff. And, that is the type of stuff you kind of got to say or yada, yada, yada. But it's clear that relationship and the strength of those relationship between Schaeffer and the players, I think really is the bedrock of why they made the moves. And I think D. Podesta's quote there backs that up. Let's just focus on the fact that, this should follow the timeline here and would force the Rockies to make a decision in a couple of years if things progress the way that Schaeffer and the team are hoping for. But in order for them to get there, and in order for them to reach that, it's going to take a lot of work. And quite frankly, a lot of luck. Locked On Rockies here, back for our third and final segment as we've been reacting to the news that Warren Schaeffer has been named manager for the Colorado Rockies in 2026 and the interim tag removed there. So the Rockies are in a situation now where they are starting to fill out some of these positions that they need to get filled out as the very important meetings coming up and all of the other decisions that they have to make. As again, they're still making some moves. The Rockies bringing in another lefty there, I think, through another minor league deal. I'll get the details. We'll probably touch on that on the later episode. Another small, low level move. But adding some veteran depth to the adding lefty veteran depth to the bullpen. Even we'll see if that pans out. All right, folks. My closing thought here with this whole thing is this should follow the timeline, right? And it's in a situation here where it could be a win-win for both sides if you're Warren Schaeffer and the Rockies here. If Warren Schaeffer, through his player development skills and his relationship with the players, is able to not only get, his job last year was to stabilize really and just kind of, do what you can, do your best to get through the season, it felt like. If he now, with the pressure of it being, this is your ship, this is your calls, this is, we're pointing to you, and this is, you are the manager, you are the guy in charge. If 2 years from now the Rockies have improved, then the Rockies could be in a situation where they can extend or stick with or keep going with Schaeffer, because he's proven and earned the opportunity to continue and really take this team to the next level, ideally in a couple of years. And if it's not successful, or it's run of the mill, or the Rockies are just stuck in the mud and not going anywhere, then you move on. And in reality, are you going to be much further behind than where you're at now because of your manager? Maybe. But I don't think so, especially when you look at the trajectory and where the Rockies have been and how they've continued throughout these years. So I at the end of the day, would it have been nice to maybe get a flashy name or for some folks to continue the trend of going outside the org and all that stuff? Sure. But I think just bringing in a new manager, specifically, we're just focusing on the manager side of this for fixing the Rockies. I don't think a manager from outside the organization is just going to be able to come in and say, oh, I can fix all of this and do everything, especially when given the roster, given the players that you have. As much as I was critical of Bud Black and have been in other episodes and this one, Bud Black was also dealing with the rosters and the lineups that he was given. Those were the teams that were built around him, or built for him, and that's going to be part of this as well. The Rockies are not only are they going to have to be able to get Schaeffer to develop their players, but they're going to have to invest in them, and they're going to have to invest in the pieces around them as well if there is success. Something that you can be critical of the Rockies not doing enough of, to maximize their time when Bud Black was, having winning baseball teams in Colorado. But my point is, this is a fine stabilizer move. And as I've said multiple times throughout this offseason, and since really they named him interim manager, you knew that this was when someone has an interim role in the Rockies, there's a good chance they have at least a great shot at getting the job. And sure enough, Warren Schaeffer got the job. But I think this one doesn't reek of the usual frustrations about the move. This one is a move that can prove to be what could be an interesting opportunity for Schaeffer and the Rockies to show us that, hey, this is different. We'll see. Only time will tell. But, folks, that is going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Rockies. Please let me know what you thought of the Rockies' decision to keep Warren Schaeffer in the Locked On Rockies YouTube comment section down below. Fire off your Rockies hot takes. Let me know what's on your mind when it comes to the Colorado Rockies. And thank you so much for making us your first listen of the day. For your second listen of the day, go check out Locked On MLB. and Locked On MLB Game Night. We'll keep reacting to all of the moves as the Rockies continue to take shape throughout the offseason here on Locked On Rockies, so don't miss out on that. But if you need more Colorado sports coverage, Locked On Broncos, Avalanche, Nuggets, Buffs, free and streaming on your favorite streaming services and on the Locked On Rockies YouTube channel. Until next time, I'm Paul Holden saying so long from the Locked On Rockies podcast.